I kind of feel like Oakhurst and Wanamass is like the base of our township, is like kind of where it started.
Well, I guess I started out when I was in junior, senior in high school and worked during the summer for my brother and his boss. Well, I had just gotten out of service and was looking to find a place, did some research and ended up buying a couple vacant lots back in the 60s, whereas a few years after that we started to build our own house.
In 1985, my wife Pam, she read in the newspaper an ad, and it was Bevin Irvin's name and his phone number, and that he was building houses in Oakhurst. And so we got a hold of him, and we met with Bevin. And Bevin knew me because I was teaching at the time in the high school. His daughters were going through the high school, and I was also assistant football coach. So what he did is he brought us to the site, which is around the corner from his house, and he showed us the lots that were available.
Billy and Pam were looking for a house, and in the particular where they're at now, I had to put a street in, which means you had to extend the street that was there, which I did, which was basically my first project, major project, and I think I extended the street approximately 600 feet. And Billy's was the second from last down on the left.
We put our deposit down and the process began. What he told me that I'll never forget is he said, I really want to make this a great neighborhood for families. That's what he wanted to do. And Bevin Irvin put true to his word. He sold the lots and built the houses, and the people he brought in were terrific. It made for just a great neighborhood. It really did.
I've lived in Ocean Township my whole life. I grew up in Oakhurst on Wallace Avenue. I was born into that house there, and it was an older neighborhood. Most of the people that lived there were older couples who were in retirement, and there were very few kids at all in that neighborhood. And right around the corner was another family, who the Grusso family, and they had 3 boys older than me, and later on they had a 4th son. And I also have a younger brother as well. So we were really the only kids in the neighborhood. And we spent a lot of time together, always playing, riding our bikes up and down the street. And as we started to get older, we both were outgrowing our houses. Both of our families were outgrowing our houses. And our fathers, who were very close also, very close friends, really wanted to bring our 2 families into a neighborhood that had a lot of kids and more room for us to play and just things like that. So my dad knew Bevin Irvin and knew that he had properties over in that area. We actually ended up getting our property from someone else, but it was right close there where Mr. Irvin had a lot of his property, and he knew that that was a great neighborhood. So Mr. Grusso and my dad both bought lots, empty lots on Fanwood Street, and started construction on the houses.
It used to be all woods. My parents bought the lot while we were living in Oakhurst. And it took us a very long time. We actually owned the lot for like 4 or 5 years, but my family actually together built the home. I mean, there's stuff that obviously we needed contractors for, but my family collectively built the house from basically bottom up.
You know, tearing down the houses and building basements and the whole bit. And they were both, you know, it was a struggle. This was hard for them to. They were 2 men. As I look back now, I know that they were 2 men who really just wanted to provide a better lifestyle for their families, and they worked really, really hard. They got their friends and their family to help build these houses. It wasn't like they hired a contractor and just, you know, signed away and moved in a couple months later. They really did so much of the work themselves. And the exciting thing was that we lived around the corner from each other in the old neighborhood, and on the exact same day in 1986 we moved into these houses, and it was just a week before Christmas.
Fanwood Street, I moved over in '86, and I remember it was that year, so that was the Giants when they beat the Broncos. Our house was just getting done. We were on a lot that had a lot of vacant lots around us. So there were a couple houses getting built. Ours was just done. And I always remember that that was the year that we moved in my house, because I remember walking out of the house like the first weekend we were in it, going to the Super Bowl party for the Giants.
I can remember that feeling as a kid. I think I was 11 years old at the time. Just, it was so exciting to like look across the street and see this family that you love, like your own family, and you're in this new house, and we just felt like we had a whole new playground, the whole neighborhood, Fanwood Street, and the way all those streets go. There were just so many kids there.
My parents did whatever they could to get us into that neighborhood. My parents are from Italy, and we were very close to the Weldons. Kelly and Terry, we grew up in Oakhurst as neighbors, and then when we both moved to Fanwood, we were neighbors again. So it was kind of like something very special. There's no doubt. I really saw their home as a second home.
We liked the area of Oakhurst. We lived, like I said, we lived in the other area of Oakhurst, but we liked the area of Oakhurst because of how close it was in proximity to the Dow Avenue Ocean Township Elementary School, to the high school, to Palea Park, to the town shops. We thought this was a great idea to move here because we had one daughter, and it would be a great place to grow up, and everything was very close.
Ocean Township, the high school was just being built not too long prior to that, well, it was quite a few years, but you know, it had a reputation as a good school system, and my wife and I rode around and looked, and I looked at a lot of houses, and at the time I really wasn't a builder. But what I saw, I felt that I could do better. So that's when I bought the couple lots over there on Findern Street, and over a period of time, I bought and sold lots. I bought a package of lots from a local lawyer, which at the time was like 20 or 30 building lots.
Well, there's always that separation, right? Wayside, Oakhurst, Wanamassa, you know, so you're in elementary school, and all you know, I grew up in Oakhurst, so that's all I know is Oakhurst, right? And then the Wanamassa kids, they know it's Wanamassa. And then you have the Wayside kids, and the Wayside kids are kind of considered like they're across the highway, they're, you know, the richer kids and stuff like that, and the Wanamassa kids are more, and the Oakhurst kids are more the like, you know, the less fortunate, but that's not even true at all.
For me, I lived in Wanamassa on Grassmere Ave. So sometimes I didn't have a ride over there. So it was always a big thing that I had to get on my bike. And sometimes that's a tough ride, especially because Joseph Palea Park was not the way that it is now with all those trails. So I actually remember going back there and trying to find the shortest way. I jumped over all these brooks and everything else. I had no idea we're back there. But that's what a big thing it was to get over there.
And all of a sudden you come to the junior high, and now you go up to these big houses in Wayside and stuff like that, and these kids are like hanging out in the mall and going to the movies, something that like my dad would never ever let me do. Like even through like high school, he wouldn't let me do that stuff, you know. But at some point, like through high school, you're just friends with everybody and everything like that. But once you're like in 5th or 6th grade, that change over to like getting used to how the different towns live and stuff like that. It's a little different, but it's all the same after a while. You know, it's all the kids are the same.
Wayside was, when I was a kid, in my head, Wayside was where all the rich kids lived, you know, very wealthy people, and they had these giant homes, which were beautiful. But I loved the small town, close-knit feel of Oakhurst. I think people that grew up in Wanamassa probably would say similar things, but I just didn't know that. I didn't have a frame of reference. I just thought Oakhurst, the streets, the houses, the neighborhood, the feel of in and out of each other's houses, walking, you know, everybody's house was like your own. You made it your own, and it just had such a close-knit feel. You rode your bike everywhere, you know, and on the way you picked up friends, you know, that were out and about as well. And I just think it was just that. It felt safe. It felt safe, and it felt comfortable, and it was just a fun place to grow up.
You know what? It's unique, and it's many things. First of all, it's on the east side of Highway 35, so it gives you a little bit more of an ability for younger kids to reach the shore without a car. So we were able to get to the beach. You don't have to cross that main highway. That's number one. You're also connected to a shore town that's empty during the winter, so. You know, it's kind of like secluded in its own respect by, you got the shore and then you got the Highway 35, so you're, you know, in between those two things. And then you have the Deal test site that's not going to be developed. So there was that whole park aspect, trees, a little bit of wilderness. And moreover, you got the high school and the elementary school right there. So it's really a special place to live and grow up.
I know everybody has neighbors and they do their own thing, but I think at any one time when you're driving through Oakhurst, you will see families coming together, whether it's for block parties or porch parties or playing outside. And when I drive through other towns, the only time I see people outside is like on Halloween. You know, I don't see kids networking together and playing outside and doing things in groups. So I think Oakhurst is very unique in that regard because we are family oriented and everybody's got each other's backs, and half the time our doors are open. You know, everybody has dogs, one dog's in one yard and the other yard, and I don't see that anywhere else in Ocean Township.
Fanwood was unique because it was a dead-end street, and dead-end, you couldn't build past the street because it was Joe Pelea Park. It was Green Acres. So there were basketball nets, and you could come down there at any time, and you had to drive very, very slowly when you came down Fanwood because you never knew when a child was going to dart out. There was children all over, and they played together, and it was really great.
When I moved to that neighborhood off of Dow Avenue by the elementary school and either way, I couldn't wait to move there because there were kids all over the place. In every house there were kids. You could find a football game, everything. There were just kids walking all over the place, so I loved it. So when I moved in there, it was like going from a neighborhood with like 10 kids to all of a sudden 100 kids.
There were 22 children that lived on the street. 8 houses, 22 children. It was fantastic. There were kids all over the place, plus kids that would come from other neighborhoods to play on Fanwood Street.
It seemed like everyone's home had children and everyone had kids. Everyone's house had 2 or 3 or 4 kids.
I live on a dead-end street now, and it's kid central. I mean, you can go outside, slightly raining, sometimes even pouring rain, and find hundreds of kids playing outside.
It was a throwback neighborhood, and everyone looked out for one another. Like I said, it was a throwback to the old-time neighborhoods where you probably didn't even have to lock your doors. Everyone looked after each other. Everybody picked up each other's mail or newspaper. If there was a problem, we would all help one another shovel snow. I had a snow plow. We'd help one another, and we all looked after the children.
We stayed occupied by playing sports, going into deal test site, playing pranks. You know, we were, you know, a little bit of a group of, I wouldn't say troublemakers, but we had a ton of energy.
Right down the street, we had this open, vacant lot, which at the time, when we were in 7th and 8th grade, we thought it was gigantic. We thought it was like the size of a football field, even though it was only the size of just a regular lot. And we had no idea who owned it or anything like that, but we would go there, we would play football. That's the lot we would hide in when we would hit cars with snowballs on Dow Avenue. We'd run back and hide in that lot. And we just went out after school and we skateboarded, we played basketball, football, everything.
I would ride my dirt bikes in that little area or pull sleds on quads.
It was almost like the movie The Sandlot with a whole bunch of different characters, like the same thing. We're all hanging around in there. And then eventually house by house got built, and down at that end too, it was like the Stacy's. I mean, our principal Galatro was down there, the Shelfs, the Cremens, the Shaws. There were so many people down on that block too.
I was always involved in sports from my little league days until playing basketball for Neptune, and then when I quit college, I went into the service and ended up in Africa, and there wasn't much to do in Africa unless you played for the school, for the base teams, and I played basketball and softball. Gave me the opportunity to travel Europe and so forth and so on. And then when I got back, I still got involved. We got involved in Little League, and we was involved with getting the girls softball started in Ocean Township, and I was coach and the president of the Traveling Girls Soccer Club, which was the only all-girls soccer club in New Jersey at the time. And of course, gravitated over to where my grandsons got involved in Pop Warner and so forth and so on. And I've always followed Ocean sports.
I was coming home from school one day, or it was already the summer, and I was going to be in 8th grade, or I was already in 8th grade about to be a freshman. And we see like these big gigantic machines on there taking all the grass out, doing all this stuff. And to tell you the truth, we were like, oh man, our lot is gone, it's going to be crazy. Like 2 days later, I come home and there's asphalt and 2 hoops on each side, and you could tell it was a full court basketball court. At that time, nobody had that. The only time you saw a full court basketball court was like in Deal. You know, we would always play basketball in my driveway till all hours of the night. We would like walk down there, see what was going on, and one day like 4 or 5 of us were walking down there, and Mr. Irvin, who owns that lot and the court, waved us over to come over, and that's the first day I met Bevin. And then, since we started playing there that day, that court went from like 4 or 5 of us playing and Mr. Irvin playing with a lot of his friends till when I was in high school. I remember Saturdays and Sundays in May, we would play 4-on-4 there. And if you lost, it would be 2 hours until you can get back on that court again.
Once it was established that anyone could just go there, it seemed like the games really got very competitive, and everyone wanted to be there and go play. So definitely, you didn't want to lose. Let's put it that way, because you wouldn't be on the court for a long time.
Game after game after game, it was endless. It was a place to socialize, a place to have fun. It was very competitive too. I mean, kids would go there to train for high school or college, as well as, youth level games.
I did put a basketball court in my backyard that was the focal point of the local neighborhood for many, many years. And the kids used to gravitate down there and played ball, and we only had one rule, whatever the language and so forth, and you could play there whenever you wanted to play.
All of a sudden it turned into like something like Fireman's Field or Park Boulevard, like a public park. And I don't think the majority of the kids knew it was somebody's private lot. I think they actually thought it was a private park. And there were days where there were cars lined up the street, to the point like we'd be walking around the halls in school and be like, what are you doing today? And everyone's like, going to Fanwood. Like, no one even knew it was a street. I think they thought it was the name of that court.
Mr. Irvin's house was up behind the court. So he had a fence. He fenced in his property, and then you saw the court when you drove down Fanwood. So the bench ran along the fence of the whole length of his property, if you think of that, the width of his property. And I can remember days, plenty of days, walking down the street or driving by and seeing that entire bench filled with kids just waiting for their turn, like they were just playing pickup games and subbing in and out, but the entire bench was filled.
But it was good. It was like a Saturday all day long. You'd start playing at like noon, and you wouldn't be done playing until like it got dark out,
I remember that most days they would come back to my house, and at first I think my mom tried to feed everybody, but that was just impossible. So eventually it was like, well, there's the hose, and here's some cups if you guys need water, because it would be hot days and everyone would be playing and playing and playing, and so she would try and do that.
It really meant a lot to everyone. I mean, it got to a point where it was almost out of control because so many people were coming by. The court was perfectly smooth. We had the glass backboards. I mean, there was even a point where they had to take down one of the rims. I remember one time Bevin had to take down one of the rims. I think that because I don't know if this is the exact reason. I never spoke to Bevin about it, but they had to take down one of the rims, and then they ended up taking down the other or something just to limit the flow of people that were coming.
And then as the years went on, I think it just started to get like way too crazy. Way too crazy. There was way too many people. There was like, garbage and stuff like that. And I think it was almost like too much for him to control.
It was such a perfect setting. It was not too far from Highway 35, close to the schools. It was just a great place, easy to find parking, and everyone knew everyone.
My years of whatever you would call my growing up years, or through puberty, or whatever the hell you want to call it, was at that court, on that street. I didn't have to go anywhere, I didn't have to get in a car or drive anywhere or go to anything or go. That's it. We played basketball. We hung out in that lot on that street every day, all weekend long. He had lights on the court that he would turn on for us. I don't think you could do that today. I don't think you could just have, if I owned the property, I don't think there was any way I would put up a basketball court and not look outside and let whoever wanted to come there play there.
Obviously now as a basketball coach, I would love for those things to happen.
When Mr. Irvin built this court, I couldn't understand it. I remember asking my dad all the time, like, why would he do that? Why would he put, where you could put a house, why would he put a basketball court? And my dad would just tell me that, he supports athletic programs. He supports kids. He wants kids to have a place to play and a place to practice their skills and get better at their sport. And he just, I can remember feeling like, what an incredible gesture. I mean, at the time, Mr. Irvin has daughters, and they were grown up. So I really feel like, in some part, he did this for my brother and our next door neighbor, and I couldn't believe what a generous gesture that was.
You know what? That basketball court made me realize that something as small as that could change the entire dynamic of an entire neighborhood.
Looking back at those times, I realized how lucky we were to have a benefactor like that, to put up some court and give a chance for the community members to hang out and play basketball and, frankly, stay out of trouble, because high school sports, in a way, are about staying out of trouble. So it was never just the team there. It was high school athletes and just friends that got together.
It was unbelievable. It was like, I think back on it now, it was just like how fortunate we were. It was unbelievable to grow up there.
You know, one thing I realized, there was a lot of talk about the turf field. Oh, Bevin, he wanted to just do this for his grandchildren, and that's all he was concerned about. But knowing that he put a basketball court in his backyard that anyone can use, we can just walk there and turn on the light. There was no sign-in sheet. There was no, oh, you don't live in Oakhurst, you're not supposed to be here. He contributed to a turf field for the same reasons, because it brings the community together and it gives kids a better surface to play on and just a great atmosphere to have the best of the best.
It really meant the world to us. It meant everything. And, you know, Fanwood Street it is who I am. And there's no question that it symbolizes the American dream for me and my family. It definitely does. Every time I go down it, I drove past it on the way here just to get that feeling. And that feeling will never die.